This show would not be produced without InstantlyRelevant.com. My teams at InstantlyRelevant.com do an excellent job at creating the content, the social media posts, managing the whole process. The systems we've built to help grow a business without brand-wrecking spam have been critical, and they're just so integrated into what we do here at Never Been Promoted. So if you have the same needs of growing a business online, through social media, through web, through email, check out InstantlyRelevant.com and see if they can help you as well.
Welcome to the Never Been Promoted podcast with Thomas Helfrich. Get ready for a thrilling adventure as we uncover entrepreneurial journeys and life-changing business insights every week. And now your host, Thomas.
Welcome to another episode of Never Been Promoted, where we help you unleash your entrepreneur by meeting other entrepreneurs and people that are smarter than me, which isn't hard. It's a low bar, but I've brought on today Mr. Ted Shelton. Ted, how are you today?
I'm doing great, and great to see you again.
We have history together with other employees, and I make you fill out a bunch of forms before you come on here. It's really for you. Take a moment to introduce yourself, your title, the company you work for, and then we'll get into kind of how that's relevant to an entrepreneur and what stage.
Sure. Ted Shelton, a partner with Bain and Company. We're a global management consulting firm. We actually have a lot of work with entrepreneurs in the form of the work that we do to support private equity. So we're probably the largest provider of services to the private equity industry in the world, advising them on investments and acquisitions of companies. But actually, the majority of our work is for very large companies. And so I spend most of my time talking about automation, artificial intelligence, and software development with some of the largest companies in the world.
And I think, so for the person who doesn't know, maybe just quickly, difference between like an angel, VC, and private equity.
Sure. Well, your angel investor is going to be the one that takes the really big bet. They're the one that says, okay, I believe in you. I believe in your dream. And, here's a small amount of money to help you along that path. And I think a lot of angel investors, certainly the angel investors hope for a return on their money, but I think there are other motivations that cause angel investors to want to be involved with startups and innovation and entrepreneurship. A venture investor, it is a financial business. They are looking at very close to their internal rate of return on capital, and they have an investment thesis. In fact, so I had the opportunity to be an entrepreneur in residence with a venture fund in Silicon Valley. Super fun, because as an entrepreneur, you hardly ever get to see the other side of the table. So I sat on the other side of the table and watched these entrepreneurs come and pitch, and then got to sit in the meetings with the partners to listen to the debrief, what they thought of these entrepreneurs afterwards. And I think the thing you have to understand as an entrepreneur is that those VCs, they are not technologists. They are not experts in your business. They are financial industry participants, right? They understand how those systems work. But a venture investor is still going to be someone who's saying, you may not be at revenue, you may not be at scale, but you've got a proven technology, a good product market fit. We're willing to invest in scaling your business. And then the private equity, though, is a very different beast. Like, they're coming in after you're really at scale, after you've got revenue. Maybe it's a recapitalization, maybe it's a merger. They take companies private, but they're typically at that later stage. They're all part of the same continuum of investment, but at those different stages.
That's a very good explanation, by the way, and especially the venture capital side. I think that might be an area to dive in just to start, because I think the angel, like you said, it's usually small amount, big payoff for them. It's gambling money, if you will, for the wealthy. They also just may like you and have this mentoring type of, let's see what we can. So there's those pieces, but the venture capital, I think you said it really well. A lot of people don't realize they're a business. And so they raise money from other wealthy angel investors, maybe even, where they put on a formal amount of money, and they have a responsibility to beat the market, beat what they could have gotten anywhere else. And if they don't do that, people pull their money out and they don't become a VC. And so I think what I'd love to hear about is maybe the top 1, 2, 3 themes that you would see or you'd hear about after the pitch. Because you have a lot of entrepreneurs out there trying to raise money. We've been through it. I know ours is because we're a services company, Instantly Relevant, so no one's going to invest in that, at least from that group. But tell me about what you would hear that people should maybe think, don't ever do this, or this is like the number one mistake that a really good idea an entrepreneur make?
Sure. Well, I think the first thing to think about is the VCs, when you come in and pitch them, have every reason to be as nice as possible to you while you're in the room. And I remember sitting in one of these sessions where, it was so friendly. It was so supportive. They were really excited. And I'm like, wow, this is great. It's one of my first meetings I'm sitting in, and I'm gonna actually see a company funded. Guy leaves the room, and then suddenly the knives come out, right? They're like, oh, that guy was an idiot. It's terrible. He's got the worst ideas. The thing he did last was also a failure. This is going to be a failure. I'm like, oh, this is not going to get funded. Right. So the first thing is that as an entrepreneur is like, you are going to be glad-handed. Do not walk out of the room thinking just because it felt good and they were nice to you that it went well or that you're going to get funded, right? So, really watch for those tells, watch for what the questions are. I think the second thing is, and you entrepreneurs out there have probably heard this, but for those that haven't, a VC will say, I would much rather invest in a strong team with a bad idea than a weak team with a good idea. Because a strong team is going to figure out how to pivot and how to make that company successful. Most ideas, when you come in and you've got a hypothesis, are wrong. And it's only through engagement with the market that you're going to learn that it's right. If you're a weak team, you hang on to your idea for too long, and you don't pivot and you don't learn. And so I would strongly recommend, going in with that attitude, saying, hey, this is our hypothesis. This is why we think it's worth testing. But we're engaged in learning and pivoting and making this work, right? And show the strength of your capability of comprehending the market, the opportunity, the technology space, whatever it happens to be, and the ability to be able to then pivot quickly. And then I think the third thing that I see often as a mistake is entrepreneurs do not come in with a really clear understanding of what they would do with the money, right? So you come in and you say, hey, I want $5 million. Great. What are you going to do with it? Right. Oh, grow the company. No, have a plan. Have a really clear plan. This is our hypothesis. This is the things that we need to do to go and test that hypothesis. We need to go and run advertising, hire salespeople, build this additional capability, whatever it happens to be, right? Be really crisp about this is how we're going to get to the next stage. And by the way, that next stage probably is another funding round, right? And so they also need to understand that you're very realistic about understanding that you're not suddenly going to become a billionaire because I gave you one round of funding, right? This is a long journey. I think there's certainly the outlier of something that becomes super successful in a short period of time, but most of these businesses, it's 5 or 10 years to turn it into something that's going to really give the returns.
That's fantastic, and I think the idea of strong team, from my own personal experience. I have a co-founder, but he's helping more technical things, and he's fantastic. But he's full time someplace else. Having the idea that can pivot, you also will have to want to have that team. So I think about myself. I really don't want 3 people. I don't want to be doing that right now. I don't want to have 3 equal partners. We're all fighting over what should we that. It's just my brain's not there yet. I've actually made a pivot myself from a company that wanted to do more of this OpenAI kind of app build, and saw quickly that, oh my gosh, this is going to be so commoditized. The companies are going to be started and lost with an update from OpenAI, instantly. And it happens now, right? You have all these companies that are like, oh, we're the content king. And then GPT Turbo comes out and well, you don't need to do that anymore because all you have to do is talk to the chat. And you're like, oh. And so I abandoned that, just went to services. And for the reason that you said, there's something to be built, but I'm in the marketplace servicing it, understanding what it is. And that's a hard thing when you initially raise money from angels and said, hey, we're going to be this digital company that does this. And I'm like, hey, I have to pivot the services to make this company work. And so our hypothesis and the outcomes are completely changed now. Anyway, the point is you have to pivot and have that. And I think the team part is important, but you got to be ready to accept having a team. And I also think if you have a stronger team, much more likely to have a really good idea that's tested because you're putting smarter people that have been more experienced together. So your chance of success on the idea is probably raised anyway. And that's great advice. Back me up though. So take me forward. Take me when the big boys get involved. And so talk to the entrepreneur that has raised money, that's in that spot of How much equity do I give up? Who do I go to? And I know they're probably being educated in it, but give them the insider's view from from the big, we're talking like Series A, B, C, or going IPO. Like, so you give the big boy advice.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a couple of interesting things here, right? When you are an entrepreneur and you have invested all of your energy and care into creating this entity and this market presence, it feels really good when it's working, and you want to hang on to it and you want to own it. But 100% of something that's worth nothing is a lot less than 17% of something that's worth a lot, right? So I think one of the things that entrepreneurs have to get their heads around is there's a point in which you are going to lose control, and that's a good thing, right? Because the fact that you are no longer actually in control is a likely sign that you're succeeding. As this has gotten big enough that a lot of people want to be involved, right? And a corollary to that is that and I see entrepreneurs make this mistake as well. You sort of say, hey, I'm good at everything, and I'm going to keep as tight a control over everything as I can, as opposed to saying, I need the best athletes in each role, and I understand what I'm good at and where I add the most value and where I need to take my job and carve off the pieces of it that I can give to other people and really give it to them, not give it to them and micromanage them, but really give it to them and let them. And look, your job as a leader then is to make sure that you've picked the right people and that you're empowering them, not that you're actually doing their jobs for them. And then there's a point at which the entrepreneur has to say, hey, you know what? One of the things I'm not the right person to do is actually lead this company anymore. And be able to say, hey, there is a person that I'm going to bring into this leadership role, and I step back. And stepping back can mean all sorts of things. Stepping back can mean, hey, I'm more of the product genius, and I'm going to focus on that. Or it may be more, hey, I'm actually really great at going out into the market and relating to customers, and I'm going to do that. Or it may be, hey, I actually need to step away from the business altogether. But I think entrepreneurs, because it is a very emotional thing, and it's very hard to separate out the emotion from the financial reality of like, you have an asset that is going to increase in value if you relinquish control.
It's a great, the idea of someone taking over your company that you started and like becoming the parent of your baby, right? It's like, hey, I know you've been the father, but I'm now the father. That I can imagine being no. Because at that point, you might be financially successful enough where the money is no longer the motivator. You're like, I kind of want my thing. The idea that you have to step away, like even I'm like, at some point, I've heard talks of CEOs saying, oh, taking an IPO and all the work they did and when to time the market and who's going to buy and just all the little tricks they do for the day of the IPO. All these, I was like, I never want to go do that. That sounds horrible. Like you wouldn't see your family for a year or friends. And I'm like, I think I'd rather be the guy that gets it to like a $10 million mark that says, hey, you want to buy that at a, 8x factor instead of your 10 tip or whatever it'd be, and then go do another one. Like I think I'd rather just bring it up, hand it off, get a little money, go do something else. And just like, that's more in my personality. But so those who can make that move, and if you're that entrepreneur, like, and you're already struggling with that, what would you recommend to prepare for it? Is it just a coach? Is it just suck it up and just be ready to hand it off to the right? Or what do you tell that person? How do they get ready to do that? Because I'm sure that's part of the reason why they don't go with certain companies, because they know they're going to get replaced.
Yeah, I know for sure. I'll tell you a story from one of my early entrepreneurial days. So I was the first outside executive brought into a company called Who-Where. Who-Where is long gone. It was an early internet company. I joined in at the end of 1996. So that's, dating myself as well. But I was brought in by the VCs because they had two college kids that were founders. We're brilliant guys, both of them, both out of Stanford. And they knew these kids had no actual business experience. And so, and I wasn't that far ahead of them. But I already had a couple of years under my belt of being an executive in a large company, and they brought me in, and it was really interesting to watch them go through exactly this challenge of understanding when to step away from the business. We we were one of the fastest growing internet companies. We did sell the company ultimately to Lycos, and at the time we sold it, it was the 8th largest website in the world. Of course, 1998, 8th largest is a lot smaller than
Like 600 people hit it a day. It was huge.
Yeah, something like that. No, but no, it was a super successful early internet company. But it was in part super successful because we recruited outside leadership, and we ended up bringing in an executive from Apple who came in to be the CEO. But it was a tough discussion with the founders. I remember walking multiple laps around the building, for hours with the with the founders, and who were ready to trash the entire company. They were ready to just say, I would rather have this company go out of business than lose control. And you had to kind of talk them off the ledge. So to your coaching point, I don't know that you needed like a formal executive coach or something like that, but having somebody in your life, in that case, it was me for those founders, but having somebody in your life that you trust, that's willing to sort of talk you off the ledge, talk you away from the emotional rawness of it, right? And be able to say, hey, you know what? If you step away and let this thing be successful, you can go on and do the next thing. Like to your point about saying, hey, I'd like to, get it to a certain point and sell it off and not take it through the entire cycle. You can do that as an entrepreneur where the business does go on to go. I mean, we could have gone public. We actually had to choose between going public and being acquired by Lycos, and we chose the Lycos acquisition. But we were able to take that business further than the founders would have been able to take it because they were willing to step away. And ultimately, that meant that those founders have been able to go on in their lives and go on and do more businesses and more things. But having that coach, having that somebody who is not emotionally invested to be able to talk you off the ledge is super important.
Yeah. And one of the things that comes to mind, and I don't know all the details, but I just remember the public side of this was, I think was it Snapchat was offered like $1 billion from Facebook at one point. And they said, no, they're worth 10 or something like that. And I'm thinking, looking at the tech going, I feel like someone could copy this in a month. Like it wasn't, video.
They could copy the technology, but they couldn't copy the viral spread of the idea. Right. And
I don't think it ended up selling for that. And I'm thinking like those founders, I was thinking at the time, are they being influenced by their investors to say no deal? Because I'm thinking the founders, even if they just made $1 million from it, money was the motivation. They made nothing. They have 1% of 1%, whatever it is. Their next thing is guaranteed to get funded. So what are their next ideas? And as great or bad as it is, they probably take secondaries on their next investment from the first day. Secondaries be where you take a common share payout immediately for your shares.
Yeah.
People, I think I have that right. It's a dream of mine, really, just a secondary. But I looked at that thinking, what influences were in place? Because I don't think it ultimately sold for that. I think it was like much, much less.
Snapchat's a publicly traded company.
Right. But at the time, I just think a choice to exit into Facebook, right? To become part of that platform. And I'm thinking, man, it's cool. It's whatever else. But I don't think it was like that original. It was like still video, still messaging. There was a viral engine to it. Anyway, they did their decision. But those are the moments where I wonder, like in the background of the scenes as an entrepreneur, like how influenced. Maybe you have another example from your current role where you've seen an entrepreneur, you have the founders saying, we want to be done, we want to exit, take the deal. And the investors who control, 80% of it, let's say, are saying no.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, look, I've seen
about that a little bit, or one's like, I want my payout, I want to move on, I want to be done with this because I'm not in control anymore. I just want the money. I want to be out. I want to be done. I want to move on. How does an entrepreneur that's in that spot or maybe facing that spot, how do they navigate that?
Well, I mean, part of it depends upon what level of control of the company you actually still have, right? Sam Altman demonstrated that with zero actual equity control, that he has complete control over OpenAI because,
and if for those
100 employees were willing to follow him out the door.
Here in late November 2023, when you're listening to this, this is the OpenAI going through 3 CEOs over the weekend. And then all the employees quitting, bringing back the original CEO and the board members that instigated this route. So, So when I say how much control does an entrepreneur have, it doesn't necessarily mean equity control, right? There are lots of kind of control points that an entrepreneur can have over a business. There was an early internet company that I was an investor in called Evite, and in the beginning of 2000, they had a very attractive buyout offer.
And the founder, exactly to the point that you're raising, the founder said, I want to sell. And by the way, as an early investor, I was super excited too. I would have made a ton of money.
Like you wanted an exit, you wanted a liquidation event.
Yeah, well, I just thought it was a good deal for the business. It was a good deal for the employees. But the venture round investors that were later on in it said no. They said not only no, but because you wanted to sell it, you're fired. Get out of here. And so they got rid of the founder. And
Wow.
And then ultimately, unfortunately, then you had the .com crash. I mean, hard to ever call the market, right? I mean, we sold to Lycos in August '98, right before the huge '99 run up. eBay didn't sell at the beginning of 2000, right before the big crash, right? So you can make mistakes on all sides of this. And by the way, the investors aren't any smarter than you as an entrepreneur. No one is good at market timing. But ultimately, when you're talking about a conflict between an entrepreneur and the investors, it does depend upon how much control do you have, and not are you the smartest or are you right?
Well, exactly. And I know, typically when we do these shows of like, I think this advice to entrepreneurs just about how to think from the day one. I always ask kind of the questions, the things you wish you would have known. Maybe tell me one thing, looking back, what's the one thing you wish you would have known? What's an entrepreneurial life lesson?
I wish I would have known that Bitcoin was going to go to $100,000.
Time machines aren't allowed in the answer. And by the way, I will give you a note on this. I agree with you on the Bitcoin. I remember, and this is where trust matters, right? There was a guy, I remember this was like 99-ish, I think it was 99, summer 99. And I don't know what Bitcoin was at that time, but it wasn't very expensive.
No, I was like, you needed multiple Bitcoins to buy a pizza.
Exactly. It was something where it was like, first of all, I don't think I had $500 or $1,000 left or all my name, but we were sitting there and I remember this guy goes, hey, do you want to get on this IPO called Red Hat? Now, this guy was super technical, but he was really sketchy, weird, kind of hacker, recluse type. And I was the opposite of that. So I didn't really trust him. Brilliant guy, but I didn't. And, he kind of came from wealth and he kind of was, dad's got money, kind of like one of those types, right? But so he was okay throwing 10K here or whatever. And I was like, oh, no, I don't, no, thank you. I just don't trust you. Red Hat would have been a good call to buy into. A few weeks later, I'm like, hey, listen, there's this thing called Bitcoin. You should get some, and I'm like, looking into it, wasn't expensive, but I was like, I don't want to be part of this Silk Road weirdness, like dark web.
Yeah, drug money.
On both cases, he was 100% right. No, I should have realized he was smarter. Anyway, look back. Entrepreneurial life lesson. It could be about how because entrepreneurship really does intersect partially with real life, like business and your life become much more entangled. Everything is amplified. It's not like you can check out and say, I don't care, I'm going to get a check. You can never really check out. And so on your life lesson, what would you have told yourself back it up 20, 30 years?
Yeah. Well, I think that one of the things that I have learned that I would tell my younger self is that you have to be careful about the lessons that you take from your experiences. And we do things and we try to learn from them, which is good, but we may learn the wrong lesson out of a particular experience. And so you actually need to be able to say, hey, let me actually look at this from multiple different perspectives, both the perspective of how I experienced it and what I, had as the outcome, but also from other perspectives to understand like what would have happened. So I just make this very pragmatic. I think one of the things that happens with entrepreneurs is that if you are successful at something, you think it's because you are smart and that you're the best at what you do. And in fact, it can often be that you were lucky, right? Now, there's a good thing to do, which is to put yourself in a place where luck will happen, right? So one of the reasons why Silicon Valley is a great place for a tech entrepreneur to go is it's much more likely that you're going to be standing on the soccer field next to a venture capitalist who wants to invest in your business than if you're in Omaha. Just increase the chances that you get lucky, right? That's smart. But recognize when it's luck and not skill that got you to where you are. You happen to be an hour late to the reception, and some other guy was an hour late, and you bump into each other going in, and it turns out to be the biggest customer you've ever landed, right? Like And so don't take from it that, oh, we had the perfect marketing campaign and that's why we succeeded. No, you succeeded because you were accidentally an hour late to that reception. You bumped into somebody, right? The dynamics for an entrepreneur then are constantly be questioning what you think you know, and the entrepreneurs that I see who succeed and then fail are the ones who actually can't get their heads around the fact that their success was not related to themselves, that there were other externalities, and that they have to be able then, when those externalities change, they have to pivot what they're doing. They think, oh, I'll just do the same thing again. It worked before.
I couldn't agree more with that. And it's the blind luck arrogance versus methodical thinking and pragmatic, like a systematic way to reinvent yourself to see if you need to. I know personally, every 90 days, I formally look at my business and going, hey, how can I simplify it? How can I need less people? And we'll get into kind of some of your background automation. And by the way, automation is not often the answer. Sometimes it's, let's stop offering that product. Let's stop doing this service.
Let's not be in that market. Yeah,
exactly. And for us, let's just give you an example. We're a services company. We help people, people come to us to stop as is right now in 2023, our business model and tip of sphere is people come to us to stop guessing how to make money via LinkedIn. Does that mean you not need web or you don't need an email campaign? No, we get you there, but we do it for you. And so one of the pivots that I've realized here in Q4 of 2023 is I'm at a maximum. I cannot take any more sales calls during a week. I'm taking 30, 40 a week. It's unbelievable. I mean, just to find the time to film a podcast or write a book was it's very difficult. And so what I found is I need to pivot to a do-it-yourself course. I need to pivot to group sales and teach people to do it. I need to get away from do it for you because it creates a lot more work, a lot more salaries. But if I could teach people at scale, I get the same value proposition to somebody and someone else is doing the work. And those who really need us to do it for you, I can charge more because they're going to be in a position to do it. And as you think through that, that's where I think an entrepreneurs miss sometimes is sometimes you got to get out of your little zone and comfort and really pivot to something a little more difficult or that's allow you to have more time to do other things. So I couldn't agree more with you on that. Looking back at your lessons, because I know I'm not smart, I'm a smart ass. No question about that. My brilliance,
the cat tie. I mean,
right? I mean, my brilliance is found more in humor, but not even everyone would agree with that. So, but I do agree that sometimes you look back in the lessons and to really self-reflect. And I read a chapter about this in the book of look at humility, look at yourself in light of how do others help you, and think more of others than yourself first. And I think those are all kind of tied together. And I see this already with people we work that they can't figure out why things aren't working. It worked in their last business. And it's hard to say to them because you're stuck in 2010, right? Like you're not thinking the same. So thank you for that. In your own journey, what's one of your happiest moments?
Well, I mean, should I be, the appropriate answer to that is something having related to my family, but I know that what you want is something.
No, actually. So related to your family is kind of the point. That'd be great. Like, hey, listen, I loved it when my kids did this, or the idea behind that is your happiest moments shouldn't maybe be about your entrepreneurial background. But they may be tied. And so it really, what is one of your happiest moments in your journey?
Yeah, no, I do think that a mistake that I have tried to avoid is being so wrapped up in the work that you don't enjoy life. And for me, enjoyment of life is the 3 daughters and the wonderful partner I have in life. And now I'm a grandfather, by the way. And so my grandson just turned 1 year old, and I'm getting to enjoy that next phase of life.
Shit out of that kid, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, he's too young to even understand he's being spoiled, but
with love. I didn't mean financially. I mean with love.
Yeah. Well, no, he's spoiled in lots of ways. I mean,
all these spoiling paths to this kid.
I mean, this kid's been all over the world already. He was in France this summer. So,
1 year old. Stamp book's already filled, and the thick passport because it's coming. Get the extra page passport, pay the money.
Kind of ridiculous, yeah. But I got to do it playing in a pool in the backyard in a southern France chateau, and with my 1 year old grandson. That was super fun. But just why actually, honestly, raising kids is an enormously challenging, but can be rewarding experience. And I think, my happiest experience is seeing, we're just all home for Thanksgiving. We're recording this the week after Thanksgiving, and having my 3 daughters all home and seeing how successful and happy they are in their lives with each of the very different things that they're pursuing right now. That's very gratifying. And, being able to be there now as the grandparent, that the anchor for this expanding family, and having them all come to our home for holidays. And it's why we do any of the rest of this.
That is the kind of happy moment I love to hear, because it is tied to your journey of work, tied to your journey. And I'm sure there's regrets in there when just interest of time. I know they're there because you've alluded to too much work. I need to spend more time. But the fact that you're in the moment now, that's it. That's the moment today being one of the happiest ones of the week. That's, you can't ask better for that, because those happy moments make some of the everything in the past come together of, okay, it's working. Fine.
Yeah.
Maybe like the last question, going to go to a speed round, is just, what's next for you? You're a partner at Bain. It's big money, big, lots of handshaking, probably good trips and crazy conversations. But what's the next 10, 15 look for you?
Yeah. Well, people ask me, like, can't you just retire? Like, why are you still working? Right. And my answer is, well, if I had the kind of job that I hated, or that was truly destructive, right, to my being, like if my job was digging ditches, right, then I would be eager to retire. But I love my job. I love what I do, and I love the intellectual challenge, the opportunity to interact with the most senior executives at the largest companies in the world who have the hardest problems, and that's sort of our mission at Bain is, if you are running one of these very large global companies, you need to be able to tap into a deep set of expertise on narrow topics at any given moment as you're navigating that business through whatever changes are happening in the world. And we're there for you. And it's tremendously gratifying to be able to see the impact that we can have. And also, in picking Bain, one of the things that was really important to me is our commitment to what we call stakeholder capitalism. And what we mean by that is that while it's important to do things for our clients that improve shareholder value, that shareholders are only one stakeholder. And then when we look at a business, we are helping the employees, we're helping the customers, we're helping the communities that the businesses operate in, and we're helping the planet as a whole. And we, if you look at our logo, there's an arrow at the top, which is off center. Which is, and our saying about that is that it's pointing to true north. So, north would be straight up and down, but actually true magnetic north is off.
And always changing.
And the whole point of true north is that when we talk to our clients, that we want to talk to them about things that are difficult that maybe they didn't want to hear, but are the right things to talk about. So when I talk to petrochemical companies, I talk about carbon footprint. And I talk about the obligation that we have as citizens on this planet together to try to reduce the carbon footprint. So, and that's not always very welcome when you're in a room full of executives from petrochemical company. But so what I hope to do over the next 10 years is continue to sit in this, I will be the first to admit, very privileged seat of being able to be an advisor to the most senior executives in the largest companies and be able to speak truth to them. To be able to actually help us improve as a species, as a planet, as a society.
I mean, and I think the key thing is there, you love what you're doing, and the moment you don't, you'll do something else, and
that's right.
And you'll exit correctly. And I think that's as even I've gone through my journey, it's hard. I mean, like, listen, I mean, even where I am here, about 3 years into my own company, I make 1/10 of what I used to in the corporate world. I'm likely, in my mind, 10x happier, and it would be 100x happier if I could bring that number up a little, so the partner or spouse in my life could be like, "Hey, I'm glad you're having a great time, but and she said yesterday, like, you still need my corporate job to kind of make this work." I'm like, "Well, yeah, of course I know. Like, there's a thing called, I was like, I can't take too much from my company yet. I need operating capital. I need to make sure I have enough to pivot and survive. Anyway, those become debates entrepreneurs have.
Okay.
And they're real ones, right? And so once you can start paying yourself more, where you get to a certain kind of level where everyone in your family is like, okay, you replaced some corporate. Now you need to make up all the savings you didn't do for the last 3 years. Your life changes. And so I think where you are, you've done, you've taken the risks. You had wins, you've had falls. You're a grandpa, P-Pop, whatever. What's their nickname for you?
Grandpappy.
Grandpappy. And which, if you can say it, first name of your grandson?
I don't want to say it because it's not fair to my daughter to publicize her child.
Say hi to him or her. Say, hey, little turkey, whatever the nickname is. This is me talking to you from the future. Anyway, you could say hi to them because they may hear you one day when this very famous podcast takes off. You're like, that guy had like 8 followers when I met him, and now he had 8. It's like the internet. Ted, listen, let me ask you. I'm not going to go through all the kind of hot seat questions, but I do want to ask you a couple of them.
Okay.
What's your, what's your favorite business book? Like, or what's the one, at least for this, for the entrepreneur listening, do you say this is a must read? Or listen?
One book that's a must read. Well, first of all, if you're an entrepreneur, you don't have any time to read.
But listen, that's why I threw that listen thing on there. Put it in your ear while you get your exercise for the day.
And is this an opportunity to pump your book?
No, it is not, because my book it's
the one book you should
never been promoted. You haven't read it yet because it hasn't been published yet. But once
I know, well, I'm excited about your book, though. I'm looking forward to reading it. So look, I would say that the book that has had the biggest impact on me this century so far is a book called Wealth of Networks by Joachim Benkler. It's a thick read. But I think it is going to be remembered as a very insightful moment in understanding how the world has changed because of network technology. He intentionally resonates with the title and with the content to Wealth of Nations, which was the book in 1776. Believe it or not, 1776. There's something else happened that year too, but it was published by Adam Smith and talking about the Industrial Revolution and sort of sketching out in the very sort of nascent form that it was at in the late 1700s, but really amazingly predictive about how the world was going to change. And I think Joachim Benkler's book is similarly, the world is changing, and it is changing right now every day. So really, really powerful book. So, and the other one that as a human being you should read is The Singularity is Near by Ray Kurzweil.
I have it actually upstairs on a dresser. I was actually thinking of rereading it because it's been probably 10 years or so, maybe since I picked it. It's been a while. Maybe that might be a little bit too far, but it's been a long time since I read it. He nailed that. It isn't like, it's got to at least be 10 years.
It is. He's updating it though. It's coming out. The Singularity is Nearer. Will come out next year, 2024.
But the concept of it is spot on, and I love the idea of this. The books, Wealth of Nations. At that time, things felt very modern, incredible. Maybe more so than even now, because now we're seeing stuff that's already modern being faster. But there, we're going from candles to like automobiles soon, like within like 100-year period. Like you're getting like, what? We'll be flying here in 100. It's like. So imagine 100 at the rate we're going now. I asked this question a couple. Is there anybody on LinkedIn that you recommend to follow?
Ethan Mollick. Stop everything. Go find Ethan Mollick. ETHAN MOLLICK. Ethan Mollick. He is a professor at Wharton. He's one of the really early educators to start understanding the impact of generative AI on education, but then also as a business school professor has been using it in his classrooms, teaching business school students and thinking about the implications for business. Super important thinker in the space, writes really regularly. He has a blog as well called One Useful Thing. But just find him on LinkedIn and you can find the rest of what he's doing.
And I ask that question because I find new people to go like find, and like the great minds of the world, as they tell me, I'm like, oh, that guy is pretty cool. Because as you know, and I certainly know on LinkedIn, your feet will get very narrow if you don't branch out a little bit and look for some stuff. And then you'll start finding value in the things you read every day because it'll be repetitive. What's the most important entrepreneurial trait?
Well, I'm going to go with curiosity, which I think is actually the most important trait for human beings generally. And what I mean by curiosity is really a couple of things, because I think bound up in true curiosity, you have humility, which is to say you accept that you don't know everything and you don't know what you don't know. You are open to being wrong and having your mind changed. You are excited and interested in the observations you can have of the world around you. And you are in a state of constant learning. So curiosity for me, includes all those other characteristics. But absolutely, I think it's the most important thing for us as humans to have.
It's the most common answer is resilience or some kind of thinking around that. I 100% agree that curiosity is the number one trait for success in the future of something that changes often. Curiosity, creativity, and which is tied to adaptability, humility. If it's smashing your own biases and preconceived notions of things, because if you're curious and you learn, you pivot to something new. You learn something new, and that curiosity ties to reading a new book, reading something like pick up and read the Torah if you want. Just challenge yourself in something you thought would be that's ridiculous. Take the most ridiculous thing and go look into it, and you might find something cool of why it is. So I love that. Here's my final question. This is an important one. That was a pause for dramatic effect. I'm working on my pauses in conversation. Have you ever, I'm so bad at it. Have you ever been promoted?
Have I ever been promoted? Well, in the sense of being promoted. So promoted is a funny word, right? We use the word promoted in a business context of saying, hey, did you move from one level in the organization to the next level in the organization? We use the word promoted from the perspective of like, hey, there is, Ted Shelton is going to be speaking on a particular podcast, and you put it out on LinkedIn, you're promoting it, right? I would say, not to counteract your title of your book, never been promoted. I have been promoted in both ways, in both senses, and I don't. On the business side, I think the promotions often come because you created the opportunity yourself. I think there are certainly cases in large organizations where there's some sort of regular career track and you're recognized. But I'll tell you my most interesting promoted story was there was this thing at the University of Chicago where I went to college called Arch Development Corporation, which was a technology commercialization arm for the university. And I was in love with technology and I really wanted to be involved. And I walked in and I said, I want to work here. I don't care what job is, like whatever job you have. And so I was the assistant to the assistant of the guy running the commercialization office. And so basically I just ran around and got coffee for whatever, right? But I would be thoughtful and sit there and listen and say something when I had something to say. And one of the partners in this business noticed and promoted me and said, hey, we're going to let you actually take on running some of these projects for us as a college kid. And, it was because I put myself out there, because I worked hard, because I was thoughtful and listened and made a good impression that I was recognized.
I read a lot in the book. I have 50 chapters. And if I think about, I'm already thinking of my next book, right? It's either going to be called Asked to Leave, which is all the shit I shouldn't have done in my career, which God knows I've been asked to leave plenty of times. But as a volume 2, you describe the thing as just show up. You showed up. Like you didn't say, hey, listen, I'm not being on this team unless I'm the starting quarterback or even second string. You said, I'm going to be assistant to the water boy. And I want to stack cups. And occasionally, I may jump in here if I see something and, get yelled at. But the coach recognized me as something valuable. That point, to show up, which ties to resilience and some other things, is so key. And I think, I don't know, I could never figure out how to get promoted. Oh, by the way, because you've been promoted, you can't join the club. Sorry. you're out. But can't join the Never Been Promoted Club. But you showed up.
Well, I'll read your book though.
Yeah, you have to read the book. You have to figure out how not to get promoted. You have to go backwards now. But I love that. Just show up. You took something that you knew was there. And finally, like the last part, I know your expertise is in intelligent automation. That's kind of our roots, how we met. But leave the entrepreneur as they think through whatever they're doing, plus automation. Give them like 30, 60 seconds of where to use technology and how to use it.
Yeah. If you haven't already gotten a paid plus account on OpenAI's GPT-4 chat GPT, go do it right now. And then wherever I said about using Mullet, go read everything that he's been writing. You can also read my blog, Infinite Future, or newsletter. LinkedIn calls them newsletters. So I write pretty regularly on LinkedIn as well about how to use generative AI to dramatically transform the way you do work. And you can make everyone in your organization a superhuman by giving them this technology. It's not a replacement for people. It is a way of extending the capabilities of people in your organization and of yourself. But you really have to invest in learning to change the way you work. So like I had a long email that I needed to write this morning, and I realized, hey, wait, I don't need to write this email. I need to let ChatGPT write this email for me. And so I go into ChatGPT and I write, here are all the things I want my email to talk about. You still have to tell it all the things you want it to do. Write this email, write in a professional tone, do this, right? And then when it got done, I had to edit it because it didn't, it doesn't get everything right. But the amount of time that task would have taken me dropped from, 30, 40 minutes to 4 or 5 minutes. That is the most important thing that you can use technology for today is individual productivity. Change the way you work. Use generative AI. Give it the guidance. Do the correction afterwards. But if you integrate it into your daily work stream, it will absolutely multiply your effectiveness and capabilities.
Ted, thank you so much, Dave, for joining and all this advice. If someone wants to get a hold of you, I think you had a newsletter. How do you want them to get a hold of you, and what should they do?
LinkedIn's the easiest way. I'm pretty easy to find. If you type my name in, there are a few other Ted Sheltons in the world, but if you write Ted Shelton Bain, there's only one Ted Shelton at Bain. So you'll find me. You can follow me. You can read my Infinite Future newsletter. If you send me a message, I'm actually pretty good at replying. Don't pitch me because I don't have time to review your product, your idea, But if you need help, you need advice, I'm a pretty giving guy. I'd be happy to help.
Ted, thank you. And listen, no pitch slapping. There's no pitch slapped. Ted, thank you so much. Everyone who's listened, thank you so much for another episode of Never Been Promoted, taking the time, learn from entrepreneurs, and go unleash your entrepreneur. And I hope maybe one day to hear your story as well. Thanks again, Ted. Everyone have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Never Been Promoted with Thomas Helfrich. Make sure to check the show notes for our guest contact information and any relevant links. Connect with Thomas personally at neverbeenpromoted.com.
Thanks again to InstantlyRelevant.com for producing the show, all the social media, all the content, posts, articles, everything. Could not do it without you. InstantlyRelevant.com. Check it out. They're awesome. Once again, InstantlyRelevant.com.